And welcome to everybody as well who's joining us. As usual, we kind of just keep ourselves on mute so that we can hear Judith talking through this. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. And then, we'll just give it a few more minutes and see who else joins us as well.
Not even quite 3 o'clock yet.
Sorry. Yeah,
there's my calendar reminding me when I'm supposed to be writing the call.
Yeah.
It is.
And and as well as the people joining us here today, there is a replay for this as well. So some people do prefer to catch that up afterwards if they can't make it.
Right.
Obviously, time zone's always there. Always a difficult thing. So there are some people, I know there was a lady who was in Australia and she was like, I'm really looking forward to the replay, but can't be here.
I know. It's really hard to reach people all around the world without offering that option. You just can't get everybody online at one time. I'm interested to see how people that are doing big conferences will handle that. I think it's, as opposed to people traveling and then making the time adjustment, it's like everybody going like, oh, I had to get up at 4 o'clock this morning.
That's true. I bet we've got 3P UK coming up as well, haven't we?
Yeah.
And that's exciting. Yeah. Lots of good stuff around at the moment.
Yeah, there is. A lot of people are doing very, very lovely things online for people. It's nice, it's an offering.
Yeah, I've been enjoying doing this since January, and it was originally going to only be until March, but because I was having so much fun with it and everyone seemed to be enjoying it, I was like, well, why not carry on? So so it's been really fun.
I'm glad you did, because otherwise I would have missed it. So
yeah, well, we would have missed out on you as well. So yeah, lovely. Right. Well, what I'll do is, whilst I'm still admitting people, I will just introduce the summit for anybody who's new, and also for you to hear a little bit about kind of the method behind it, I guess, or the reasoning behind it. So for me, I called it Self-Rediscovery Summit because it kind of summed up my journey with the principles. I think when people come to a journey of self-rediscovery, it's often with the idea that there's something to kind of fix or change or do to I don't know, find ourselves. And what I came to see is that whilst we can kind of dance in who we want to be and play in that, it's more about kind of seeing deeper who we already are beyond that, in our wisdom, and how we can be moved from there. So that was kind of the aim and in this, and helping people see that by pointing in that direction. So we've heard from lots of different lovely speakers, just in people sharing their own journeys and on different topics, and it's just been really lovely to help people kind of see that for themselves. So we've explored lots of different topics. We're live every Friday, and I'm always in the self-rediscovery community online as well, which I saw you join today.
I thought I should do that just to see a little bit more about it.
So I'm always in there kind of if anybody has questions or just wants kind of pointing in a direction. So that's been really fun to create. So I'm just going to introduce you a little bit. I don't think you need much of an introduction really, because so many people will have heard of you, but I just wanted to share a little bit about why I was so excited to have you on as well. So I'm really honoured to be kind of sharing space with you today, and thank you to everyone who's shown up as well. And just when I was reading your website, the words stood out about kind of blossoming from within. So that's why I kind of titled it that, because that really spoke to me. I love that. And I think again, for me, it's about seeing how when we rediscover our power and resilience, that kind of unfolds life, and we can create a life we love from that kind of, it feels like a foundational grounding for me in our wisdom. So you're I'm going to formally introduce you. According to your bio, Dr. Judith Sedgeman has been dedicated to sharing the principles of mind, consciousness and thought professionally for more than 30 years. She has worked over the years with many other practitioners of the three principles throughout the US and around the world as a consultant, university professor, an institute director and a mentor. Collaboration and partnership are the keys to extending the power of the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought to awaken health and well-being across diverse populations. And Judy has long been a leader in mentoring, teaching, and practicing leadership in the presentation and development of 3 principles: education and services. As well as that, you're a gorgeous human being, and I love hearing you talk. And quite often I've heard you talk and been kind of moved to tears without really knowing why. So that's kind of something that spoke to me, because I think that's the perfect definition of how kind of wisdom, speaking to a place of truth in us, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't always have to be clear as to what we've heard. So yeah, I guess what I normally invite people to do is kind of share a little bit about their own journey, and people love a shared personal story, I think. So I don't know whether you want to start with that, and then we can just go from there, and you can share whatever comes to you from your wisdom. But I just wondered what the insight was that you had that we're blossoming from within, and what kind of led you here. I know Bill said, because he was on last week, Bill Pettit, and he was excited to hear that you were speaking this week as well. So
yeah, it's funny. I was supposed to be on a conference call with him, and I had the time wrong on my calendar for you. And he said, "No, you're supposed to be on Nicole's."
oh, oh, that's lovely.
You might schedule better than I did. So anyway, well, a lot of people have heard the story. Obviously, Bill Pettit was the first introduction that I had to the principles a long time ago. He had only been involved for a year or so when I met him, so we've both been kind of veterans. But I was reflecting on how to start, and I thought, well, since we're talking about blossoming from within, rather than going through sort of the early stages of my astonishment at discovering the principles, I would talk about my first experience of having that sense that something changed within me that was very, very different. And it really came about when I was sitting home quietly. Second Chance had just come out, and Bill had some copies of the book, and he gave me one to read. And so I was alone at home one afternoon. My husband and my daughter were off doing something or other, and I thought, well, I'll just read this book a little bit. And I was an English major in college, so I'm a critical reader, and at that time I was a critical, analytical person. I thought a lot anyway. So I started reading the book, and I thought, gosh, this isn't a very good novel. I was finding all the English major flaws in it. But I persisted because I wondered, I thought it was important. And all of a sudden I came to this statement, 2 things that just knocked me over. The first was when the Richard asked Jonathan, well, what is success? And Jonathan says, happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And Richard said, is that it? And Jonathan says, isn't that enough? Or something to that effect. And I thought, I had never, ever in my life associated happiness with success. I associated hard work, drive, persistence, intelligence, good luck. But it never dawned on me that you would define success as simply being happy. And I remember I was sitting on my couch, and I was thinking, well, what the hell am I doing with my life? I really did the question, because I was in all these other realms, forgetting about happiness was irrelevant. I always even made the assumption that successful people probably weren't happy because we didn't have time for it. And happiness went along with childhood and playfulness and all those things, but it certainly wasn't part of your adult responsible life.
I love that.
And then I kept reading, and I came to the part where Richard is talking about failing, and Jonathan says failure is a thought. And I had this amazing kind of moment, and it was like I just sat there on the couch, and I thought, I didn't ever really voice this before, but I've been afraid of failure my whole life. The reason I was so driven to succeed is because I was so afraid to fail. And that's why I wasn't happy. I mean, it all kind of came together in my mind. And it was so overwhelming to me that just to start to see that. And I felt like something more important was coming up. It was sort of like watching a recipe sort of start to take flavor and form as it cooks, and you peek into the oven and you see the cake rising or whatever. And I felt like this something important here. And I just stopped reading the book and I put on my running clothes and I went out to take a run, which I found very relaxing. That was one of the few times that in my life, I wasn't trying to rev myself up. I was trying to just enjoy the day. Now I was running along the river where I lived, and all of a sudden I just thought, I'm doing everything in my life completely backwards. Everything, everything, not just a few things. And, that's a pretty shocking, that's a very shocking moment when something like that happens to you and you're really sure you're right about it. We've had thoughts like that, and people always have thoughts, well, maybe I'm wrong, and then usually your mind goes, no, you can't possibly be wrong. But I just really just gave up. I mean, I thought I'm running my business in a way that's creating insecurity rather than creating health and well-being in my clients and my staff. I'm running my life on empty. I didn't get enough rest. I wasn't taking care of myself well enough. I'm running my motherhood like I was supposed to be in charge of somebody instead of helping her blossom and become the person she wanted to be. And everything sort of, it was, I'm breaking it down as I'm telling you this now, but it like spread out before me like a painting, like, the painting of my life. And I saw everything changed and how different it could be.
That's beautiful.
And that was the first experience I had of one of those times when something that that you've known that you never thought before, that you've never considered before, just suddenly bubbles up and it's in front of you and you can't deny it. You can't not take it to heart.
What I love about that was that you started off that kind of sort of almost hearing some sort of truth, but you weren't really sure what it was, but you kind of
Right.
stuck with it. And then it kind of just became clearer, because I hear a lot of people kind of grappling with, oh, well, I need to understand the principles.
Yeah, no.
And it feels, it's like something just speaks to a place of truth and then it kind of reveals itself, it feels, which is what I'm hearing in what you share there.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, we weren't even talking about the principles as such. I don't think anybody, Sid obviously understood the principles, but, the few people, there were only about 30 of us in the whole world.
Wow.
And, or maybe there might have been more if I didn't know all the people on Salt Spring who weren't actively attending conferences and everything. So there probably were more that were really close to Sid that didn't, sort of join in the US push. But it was a very small group of people, and we were lucky to be able to talk about thought. We were just starting. But I remember I came back from that run and I went upstairs and took a shower and got dressed and started dinner because my family was due home. And I started to think, starting from this moment, my life is going to be different. I didn't know how I was going to do it or how it would happen or what would change. I really didn't. I just knew that it's like a door slammed and locked and there was no way back. So my husband and my daughter came home, and my daughter at that time she's pre-teenage. And she came in the house and she said, "Mom, you look really good. What's happened?" And all I'd done is taken a shower and put on clean jogging clothes. So it wasn't like I'd been at the beauty parlor or anything. And I said, well, I don't know. I had some different thoughts, and I just couldn't even articulate it.
Yeah.
But the thing that she noticed, that she, as children and pets are both very good at picking up on a feeling. you know, when you're feeling changes. And I think she could feel something.
Yeah.
She was very attuned. And when I went to work the next day in the car on the way to work, I thought, I had this humbling realization. I was in the medical practice management business, and we were experts, and we would analyze a person's practice and all the things about their office and how everything was run and what they were doing and so on. And then we would give them advice about how to do everything differently. And most of the time they liked our advice and they thought it was very smart, but they didn't do it. So we would get paid to give them a big report with all this advice in it. It would sit on a shelf unless they hired us to do it for them, which a lot of them did. But then they were sort of not even really engaged, you know?
Yeah.
And I was driving to work and I thought, who the hell do I think I am? That I would know more about running a doctor's practice than he would know or she would know.
Yeah.
What kind of thought is that? You know, and I realized, well, I do know a lot about it, but I know generically about how to run a business and a lot about healthcare and regulations and everything, but I don't really know if Dr. X, the orthopedic surgeon, should be seeing 20 patients a week or 50 patients a week. I mean, these are not I'm making suggestions to people on the basis of nothing, just literature and other people's ideas. So by the time I got to work, it was really about a 6-minute drive. It wasn't very far. By the time I got to work, I called a staff meeting and I said, we're going to change everything.
Yeah.
And my staff was freaking out, of course, because, and the way to do that was we used to have meetings with our clients and we would present our findings and information to them. And the clients that we were managing would present reports on how they were doing and all kinds of detail and financials. And I said, you know, those who have hired us don't really, if they wanted to look at all those details, they would have been doing it themselves. You know, and we're not trusting that they trust us. And we're defending what doesn't even need to be defended. We're doing a good job. They can see the outcome. Why are we giving them all these numbers? It makes no sense to me. So we're going to stop doing that. Plus we're wasting a lot of paper.
Quite a radical change.
What are we going to do then? You know, because that was like the bulk of the meeting. And I said, well, we're going to do something different. And I said, we're going to have like a informal conversation about their hopes and dreams. And one person on my staff said, they're doctors. You know, like they don't have hopes and dreams. I said, everybody has hopes and dreams. I really believe that. So they kind of got into it. And the next time we had a practice meeting, it was a cardiology group, as I recall, was our first experiment. And instead of having these massive booklets with all these reports in them last month's and this month's and our projections and all this kind of stuff and information about medicine, articles, and everybody had a little placemat, and then we served lemonade, coffee, tea, water, and cookies because it was late afternoon, and everybody could help themselves to that. And there was music playing when they came in. I was just playing soft music, nothing fancy, but just to sort of keep and provide an atmosphere. And there were 2 pieces of paper on everybody's place. And one was a 1-sheet summary of their financial condition, and the other was blank. And there was a pen. So the doctors came in and they're really puzzled, but you know, they were tired. It was the end of the day. They kind of liked having the lemonade and the coffee and the tea. And, you know, they all sat around the table. And of course, once somebody's drinking lemonade and coffee and tea, they start chatting, you know, because it's informal. So I asked everybody how their family was, and we're chatting about their kids. And so the head of the group, the lead cardiologist, said, well, what are we going to do at this meeting? And I said, well, you might want to take a glance at our financial summary, because what we've done is we've taken that big book and kind of condensed it, compressed it into one simple page. And if you have any questions, of course, we'd be happy to answer them. And we have all the backup material, but we just kind of didn't think you really need to see it. So he looked at the one page and he said, "Oh, I love this. This is great. I understand this." So everybody around the table, since he was the leader, said, "Yeah, it's really good." So that was that. That was the end of the business. And so the head cardiologist looked at me and said, "Well, what do you think we should meet about?" And I said, "Well, I wondered, you've just taken in 2 young partners, and so your practice is expanding, and you've redecorated your building and added some offices." And I said, "I'm wondering what's next for you all. What are you thinking of doing? How are these new people going to flourish in your practice and develop their own?" Because they were more specialized than the older doctors. Mm. So they thought that was a good question. And so they started talking among themselves. And I was just sort of facilitating this nice conversation they were having, and my staff was sitting there like agape. And they couldn't believe what was going on. And they had this idea that they had an empty lot that they could purchase next to their building, and that they would build a cardiac diagnostic center so that they could do their own diagnostics, and they'd have them quicker and they would be more reliable. And the younger doctors were thrilled about that, because one of them was a specialist that required very detailed diagnostic information. It was hard to get. And so they said, "But, we have no idea how to do that." I mean, well, I said, "That I can help you with that. I mean, if you tell me that you want to negotiate for that piece of land, I can get that started, for you, and arrange the financing. And certainly we can interview architects and do the things that you have to do to kind of be ready to start a venture like that." So they said, "Oh, that would be great." And they didn't even ask me what we would charge for that, which is much more than we would charge to just look at paperwork. Mm. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And so we had a really nice meeting, and they left. They were all excited about their new idea, which I would have never thought of, because I wouldn't have occurred to me. And they did it. I mean, that was the next level of our involvement with that practice. And this was repeated over and over as we went through these meetings. Mm. And I realized I had never before considered that being smart was not what mattered. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help to be smart in life. It doesn't help to be analytical. It doesn't help. It doesn't hurt. You obviously have to know about your field. Mm. But knowing about people is much more important. That's step one. And when you know about people, then being smart becomes the servant rather than the master of your work.
Yeah.
And it changed everything. I mean, our whole business got much more fun and much more engaging as far as the client's involvement. And we got into fun projects that we all really enjoyed working on that were different. And that all happened from reading those 2 paragraphs in Sid Banks' book, and just something woke up inside me. Now, second chance is not about reframing your business, and it's about the journey of a person who's suffering to find some peace. And I wasn't suffering, and I didn't even relate to Richard in the book, but what I saw was something that I knew, but I didn't know I knew it, that was accessible to me. And that's really what it means when we talk about what's different about what we do with people to help them, is we don't give them advice. We don't make suggestions about their life. We don't tell them, "Look, why don't you try this?" or "How about that?" We point them in the direction of their own highest order thinking, their own hopes and dreams, their own aspirations, their own vision for their own life, their own strength, their own fascinations.
Yeah, that's cool.
And when we changed in that regard to our clients, we seemed like we had taken a leap, into being much better consultants. But we just stopped giving advice altogether. We became facilitators in the true sense of the word, which means to make something easy.
Yeah.
And that's what a facilitator does. And I think that that's the most important quality. I think that I gained personally, and that I've been trying ever since to share with others through my involvement with Sydney Banks and through learning the principles, is that, whatever I do, it's not about me. It's about our shared humanity. It's about you. It's about other people. It's about all of us together being the very best that we are and can be.
It feels like that's kind of very much about pointing people home to their possibility,
Right.
and that's the possibility that's already there.
Right.
Well, and it's funny because when I came to the principles, I actually was suffering, and so for a long time it felt to me like the principles was offering me peace, which it did, because it kind of, when I started to see that we weren't broken and we didn't need fixing, that was a huge insight for me, because it stopped me from searching. But for a time I heard, oh, there's nothing to do, so I kind of just sat back. I was like, oh, that's great, I don't need to do anything for the rest of the time. But then and I think it was you actually that made me see that doesn't, it's not necessarily that we do nothing. There's nothing
Right.
to do to be psychologically okay, but we can still kind of dance in our hopes and dreams. And I
Right.
think there's something
Yeah.
that you said along the lines of, you can either choose to be right or choose to be happy, or something along those lines. I can't
Right.
remember quite what it was, and I was like, oh, it's a choice. Because I kind of lost that somewhere.
Choice. Happiness is a choice. And it's funny what I mean by that. People say, well, yeah, but I'm really upset about this or that, or I'm really sad about this or that, or I don't see it as a choice. Excuse me. But it is a choice in that sense. The thoughts that we pay attention to that pass through our mind are the ones we choose to spend time with. It's like picking friends. So yeah, if sad things are happening all around you, you're going to have some sad thoughts, because we're all, in life together. Excuse me. But that's not that's not important. What's important is how much weight do we put on that, and
Yeah.
how easily do we see that it's just thought, that
Yeah, and I think
something
that's
that pops, yeah, that's something that pops into my mind.
yeah.
I've got a choice as soon as it pops into my mind. Am I going to hang out with it and bring its friends in, or am I going to just let it keep on its journey and see what pops up next?
Yeah, I think that was what was crucial for me, because I did see that, we did have choice, and it rather than it becoming a need to change my thoughts,
Mhm.
it was seeing that the thought would just go by itself, and a new thought would come in. But I
Mhm.
also was able to kind of play with that, and ride with the thoughts that were fun. And that feels kind of like what you're saying. I don't know.
Well, and it's not only just that, it's realizing that you start to realize that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are your creation. It's
Yeah.
like, and this is a terrible sort of pettit like example. He's always using examples like this, but made me think of it. Is like when my daughter was a tiny baby, when she was really little and started toddling around, she suddenly discovered, as they discover themselves, she discovered that she produced things in her diaper.
Mm.
And of course, she had no concept of what she was producing, but she was very excited that she was producing things. And so she pull, reaching into her diaper and pulling things out and looking at them and smearing them around and things like that. And I gather that's not that unusual with children, so I don't mind telling the story. And of course, she grew out of it. But and at the time I was horrified, because of course I was seeing it through the eyes of an adult. Like, that's just disgusting. You don't do that. She's a baby and she's thinking, look what I did.
Yeah.
I made that. And so I asked the pediatrician about it, and he just laughed, and he said, when you have a baby, you have to think like a baby. You have to be able to put yourself in the mind of a baby. What does she know about poop? It's not, she's in diapers, for heaven's sake. About the bathroom and flushing and wiping and all these things. She hasn't learned any of that yet. And so you're asking her to imagine your world, and it's too soon. And I realize that that's a great example of, forgetting that when we create a thought, it's unique to us and it's very meaningful in the moment it takes shape in our mind. Little people produce entirely different, meaningful, beautiful thoughts that are very important to them, even though they may to us look horrible or silly or stupid or meaningless. And the same is true as we get on in life. I've suddenly developed a great deal of respect for other people's thinking. And I had a occasion recently to have a client who was shut up in the house with her husband of, I guess, about 20 years for the first time. It was a second or third marriage for them. They're older. And they had kind of had their own lives. He played sports or golf or whatever, and she did her clubs and flowers and so on. But now they're stuck at home together, and they've never spent that much time together. And she called on an emergency basis. She called the counseling center where I work as a contractor and asked for an emergency counseling. And so a lot of people have been in these times. We're going through this coronavirus thing, so a lot of people are going through a lot. So of course I try to respond if I get a call like that. So I said, sure, I'll fit her in. So we got on the phone, and her emergency was that he couldn't satisfy her sexually. Now, my first thought was, come on. I just gotten off the phone with a nurse who was just devastated because she had to attend to the third dying patient in a day in the hospital in the intensive care unit, and no family. She was the sole witness, and it was just tearing her up. And I just got off the phone with this nurse, and here was this woman saying, it's just terrible. I've been pumping Viagra into, I don't know what else to do. And, it takes a moment for us to realize that is as real a problem to that woman as a dying patient is to that nurse. That our thinking is important to us.
Yeah.
That it shouldn't, the more you understand the principles, the more we realize as it starts to look really important, we should question that. We could say, why is this thought such a big deal to me? It's just a thought. But if you don't know that, every thought is a big deal. Because it looks really real. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of catch my breath, because it was like from one call to the next, and it was such a disparate problem. But then I realized, as I talked to this lady, that she had been a very beautiful young woman. She was older now, and she was very reliant on her sex appeal. That was part of her thing all of her life. And she felt diminished, like she was started to have questions about being older and unappealing, and that's the only way she knew to measure her relationships. That was her yardstick, and had been since she was a teenager. So as I realized how that thought had grown and blossomed in her head and become so important to her, I could see why this seemed like an emergency to her.
Yeah.
Because the real emergency was, am I getting old? Am I useless now? Is there anything, if I can't do this, is there anything that I can do? What would be the point?
Yeah, it's
And
funny
it
how
was really it's a deeply spiritual moment that she was having, confronting the reality of aging and
worthiness.
life.
Yes, her worthiness thinking.
So we ended up having a very deep discussion about the principles, and about how habitual thinking can become it's almost like you built a room in your house, and you've never redecorated it, and you don't like it, but there it is. And And it's really funny because she said that she had been, in her previous marriages, she had been through several marriage counselors for similar problems, even when she was younger. And they always told her to divorce her husband.
Mm.
And she said, "You haven't even mentioned my husband." And I said, "It's not his problem. It's your thinking, not him." you know. And she just laughed. She said, "I guess not." She said, "It doesn't seem to bother him at all." and, and the funniest part was that I just told her, I said, "Look, if you look for a beautiful feeling in life and you start to question when habitual thoughts come to mind that bum you out and drag you down, you start to question, like, why would I spend time, give away my peace of mind to this thought? There's so much else to allow my thinking to wander through." And I thought that's the only thing I suggested is, just you could start to question your thinking.
Mm.
And she called me a week later and she said, "We have had the best week of our marriage. We have had so much fun."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, what have you been doing?" And she said, "Well, we've been watching movies, and we pick out movies, funny movies on Netflix, and we've been taking walks. And we even borrowed our neighbor's dog so we could take the dog for a walk." And, she said, "It's just been really nice." And the week went by, we cooked some things together to experiment with new food. She never mentioned the bedroom.
Mm.
That just had disappeared from her thinking.
Yeah.
And I of course did not ask about it. And I'm sure whatever happened, it was fine. But she came alive as a human being, bigger than her sex appeal,
Mm.
more deep and profound and spiritually meaningful than just a body.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And
And that's
that is,
always been there. That's always been there. It's part of all of us. It's too bad somebody didn't tell her that when she was 17.
yes, I know it's amazing when you do see it. It's so
Mhm.
life changing that you kind of like, well, how come I didn't know this before? Because it's also quite simple when you do see it as
Yeah.
well. In ways.
But part of it is just realizing that the things that we are thinking are important about our thoughts are usually not what's the deeper point.
Yeah.
The deeper point is, it's like, why do I take any thinking seriously?
Mm.
That's the question people need to ask themselves is why, if I'm unhappy every day, why am I taking my thinking seriously?
Mm.
Why would I do that to myself?
And it's that helps us see the choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why happiness is a choice, because as soon as you ask that question, if there's no good answer, uh, it's pretty easy to make a different choice. It's just natural to us. We're born wishing we were happy and being happy and knowing that we can be happy and getting over things. Little kids get over things just like that. They don't dwell
Mm.
and hold grudges and get angry for days on end. And then we learn to do that. And all we've learned to do is to cling to certain thoughts because they frighten us, or we don't know what to do about them, or they make, we feel like we have to resolve them somehow.
Mm.
But no thought content needs to be resolved. It will dissolve on its own,
Mm.
unattended.
Yeah, when we leave it alone. And what comes to my mind here is that even the hopes and dreams feel like thought.
They are.
Yeah,
They're
but I
just
think
higher. They're just more fun thoughts.
yeah,
But when you ask somebody about their hopes and dreams, what it does is it brings them into the moment.
yeah,
So if you ask somebody about their problems, they go digging in the past.
mm,
Because in order to have a problem, something has to have happened in the past that you have dwelled on
yeah,
and made something of. That's the definition of a problem. Nobody has a problem in the present moment. You either solve it or it becomes a problem in the past.
yeah,
So like if I spill water, it's not a problem. I just wipe it up and then forget about it.
yeah,
But if I spill water and then I start saying, "Oh my God, it's the 5th time I've spilled water this week. Maybe I've got Parkinson's or something. Something must be going wrong with me." Well, then I've made something of the spilled water
mm,
that has created a problem, but it's still just spilled water and I wiped it up.
yeah,
So um, what we do with the thoughts we have determines the importance that they take in our lives.
Mm.
How many more thoughts we add to them, how long we dwell on them, how significant they look to us. And as long as we always remember that no matter how we're dealing with our thoughts, they're still ephemeral. As soon as we turn away, they'll be gone.
Mm.
They don't hang around. The thoughts have no life of their own. They're sort of like the virus. They have to attach to something, and you gotta, to find a host in order to hang around.
Yeah.
And so to the degree that we start to realize that thought is the vehicle that we've been given to enjoy the nature of our life.
Mm.
That's all it is. The ability to think is the ability to look at the whole array of what's in front of us and decide what we want to focus on in that moment and think about it.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And if we don't like what we're thinking about or the feeling that we're getting as we're thinking about it, all we have to do is look away and try something else.
That's what I began to see. And I began to see that the more I focused on my hopes and dreams and the joy and all of that sort of stuff, life then became just like, it just unraveled.
Yeah.
And I was very much like you. I'd kind of worked very hard all my life and seen that was really important. And
yeah,
the second I kind of saw something different about that and that dropped away, it was like, oh no, we can just have fun with life. We can play with life. And I kind of call it dancing with being human. And that kind of, yeah, for me, that was when everything started to shift. And I began to see it wasn't just about kind of finding freedom from suffering. It was like, no, we can actually unravel a life we love by just choosing our focus. I guess.
Right. Well, it's not, and it's also being free to choose again.
Yeah.
If one of the things that this understanding did for me in business is that I made fewer. Like I think a lot of people are this way that are responsible for something important in their business, whatever it might be, something that we deem to be important. Is if you make a decision and it's not going well, you'll stick with it and try to defend it and fix it rather than just go, well, that's not working out, so forget it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened for me, it was very easy for me to let go all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like I decided at one point that we used to open little sort of sub services as the need arose. And I decided that we would do a transcription center. And I had space and a person with a transcriptionist, and it just she wasn't fast enough, and I didn't want to hire more people because there was not that much work. So the doctors weren't getting the turnover as rapidly as they wanted it. And I thought, this isn't working. So I had a transcription service for a month. And I just called the clients that were using her in my transcription service and said, I'm going to close it down because I don't think it's really working well. And I don't think it's helping you as much as I had hoped. And it certainly isn't generating the level of business that it needs to keep itself going. And so I think it was a mistake and I'm not going to do it anymore. But I'll give you her name and number if you'd like to hire her on your own, or, I can help you to find another transcriptionist. Yeah. And it was so funny because I remember my COO looked at me and she said, I can't believe that you were so excited about that idea. I said, yeah, it was just a bad idea. I looked good for a minute there.
Yeah.
But that wasn't like me. I would have otherwise said, no, we got to figure out how to fix this, or we got to, it just wasn't going to work. I could just see that. And I wasn't attached to it. I had no ego attachment whatsoever anymore to anything.
I see that as well. And again, that for me in my business, it's like, well, you can try something and it doesn't work, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not serious.
No. And it's not a statement about you. It's just it's a fluke of thought. It's a random thought that, like a mosquito bite, that one bit me, but it was kind of itchy. So, so I really, honestly, and that made it very easy for me to change my life. I mean, the other thing that happened is, after I stayed in the business for, I guess, another 4 or 5 years, and then I really got so committed. I was more and more doing work in the principles and leaving it up to my staff to do all the other work. And I had sort of branched out into doing staff trainings and leadership meetings and things like that. And I really wanted to do this 100%. And so I just wanted to leave the business. And my daughter went to college, and I was divorced. And I was sitting in my big house thinking, I just need to start over somewhere. I need to do something different. And the phone rang, and it was George Bransky. And, George is very funny. He just blurts things out. He's always been that way. So, and I knew him well, but it's not like he was a phone buddy that I talked to all the time. I was kind of surprised to hear from him. And he said, I just was thinking about you, Judy. What are you doing? And I said, well, right now I'm sitting on the patio, trying to figure out what to do next. And he said, have you ever thought about moving to LaConner? And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, oh, okay. And then he chatted a little bit more, and we hung up the phone. And I remember I went back in the house, and I thought, well, that'd be fun. Mm. I could move to LaConner. Now, he did not offer me a job. He didn't tell me what I would do if I moved there. He didn't suggest anything. He just asked me if I'd ever thought about moving to LaConner. And that was the extent of it. So about 2 weeks passed, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I called, I didn't even talk to George. I called George's secretary, Terry, and I said, okay, I talked to George a couple of weeks ago, and he asked me if I'd ever thought about moving to LaConner, and I really hadn't. But it's popped up in my mind a few times since then, and I've decided to do it. She said, oh, that's great. She said, well, how can I help you? And I said, well, do you have like the real estate? Is there a publication or something with real estate in it? And she said, well, we just have this little local newspaper. I'll send you the back page. It's got all the rentals. Mm. So she sent me the back page of the newspaper, and I called this one rental, and the lady sounded really nice, and she had one picture. It seemed nice. And so I rented it. And I sold everything I owned. I sold my house and everything in it. I had a great big house. Mm. And down to the bare minimum, I kept my bed and my couple of chairs, and I packed up my car, and I drove across country and moved to LaConner.
That's amazing.
So when I got there, it turned out that the rental house was adorable. It was really sweet, and I had brought just enough furniture to make it comfortable, and because it was small. And I called George, and I said, well, I've moved to LaConner. And he said, oh, that's really nice. He said, you want to have lunch with me and Linda? I said, yeah, sure. And, it was a couple of weeks. And they weren't saying anything about, do you want to work with us or anything like that. And I was thinking like, well, here I am. And then Sid called me. And Sid said, so I heard you moved to LaConner, and I got your number from George's office. And I said, yeah, I did. And he said, that's really nice. He said, so how do you like your house? And I said, oh, it's really pretty. I like it. It's got a nice woodsy view, and I really like it. He said, does it have a good kitchen? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I was wondering, you made pea soup one time when I came to Florida, and I really liked it. And I was wondering what you put in your pea soup. And I said, well, it's just pea soup. Everybody makes it the same way, and I think. And he said, no, there was something in your soup that was a little bit different. And I said, I stopped and thought for a moment. I said, oh, probably it's because I always sprinkle a little cinnamon into it. My mom used to do that. He said, oh, cinnamon. That's probably what it was. I said, I'm going to try that. I'm going to make some pea soup today. So I said, well, that's nice. And he said, well, dearie, I hope you enjoy your kitchen and your house and your life in LaConner. It seems like a really nice move for you. And he hung up. So I thought to myself, well, okay. Now, here's the secret to that. There's something in every time I talked to Sid, it was like that. He would just talk about stuff. I've had so many trivial conversations with Sid Banks that I can't even remember them all. And then about 2 hours later, all of a sudden, you're just dumbstruck with something. Now, I can't explain that. That's the mystery of a deep feeling and the person that knows just the right seed to plant, I guess.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, you know what? I've got to get settled here. It is nice. I do like it. And I've moved. I've changed my life. And now I got to commit to this life. I was there, but I wasn't committed yet.
Mm.
So I called George and I said, George, I'm all settled. I've got my stuff put away and everything. And I was going to cook some food, and I wondered if you and Linda would like to come over and eat. And he said, sure. So they came over, and I said, I would like to find a way to do some work here. And I moved to LaConner, so I'm interested in the work that you do, because that's pretty much all that was going on in LaConner if you weren't running a restaurant and or a gift shop. And George says, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk about that. We'll see." And a couple days later, they called and suggested that I become an intern. And here's what's interesting about that. Now, that was for a moment there, it took me aback, because I had been the CEO of my own business for 9 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I had 44 people working for me and 167 clients. I had been doing trainings in this work all through the medical community.
Mm.
And I suddenly realized, and I was, I hadn't been an intern for years, since I was in college, so I had this moment where I thought, oh my God. But I knew better. That was a beautiful feeling for me to say, you know better than to entertain that thought.
Mm.
That's your ego. That's all it is. So I said, okay. And I realized how much there was to learn, because I was willing to be an intern.
Yeah.
I could have just left and gone and started another business somewhere, but I really saw that was, as soon as I got over myself. And that's what I mean about when you lose the attachment to these thoughts. And that was just a habitual, I'm important thought, because I've been running things for so long.
Mm.
But who cares?
Yeah.
This was an opportunity to pursue a new dream. And I really wanted to help people. And I thought, well, you can't help people if you don't help yourself first, So that's
that. And I think
what launched me in this work. I was in LaConner for 9 years. I wasn't an intern for 9 years, but I was an intern for 1, and then for 8, I was an associate. And that's before I went to West Virginia University. But when I think about that, that's another one of those moments where just something in me said, "This is a beautiful moment. Don't spoil it."
And also just the freedom of thought in just moving there in the first place. A lot of people could have shut down that possibility by taking thought seriously in the first place. Like, there's a lot of resistance for a lot of people in that, but just to kind of show up and be moved, I guess. Literally.
Well, and the other thing that was interesting is that I did not have a single friend at that time. I was living in Florida. You can't be any farther away from LaConner. It's like from one low corner of the country to the top edge of the country on the other side. I did not have a single friend who thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody even came to wish me well. They were all feeling sorry for me. I had one friend who said, we really almost were going to do an intervention later after the fact, because we thought you had just gone off the deep end, that you were just picking up and selling everything. Everything. My china, my silver, my clothes. I sold everything because I needed the money to move. Yeah. And also because I didn't ever want to live in a big house again. And so they all, to this day, because I've moved back to where I moved from 20 years later, just, 10 years ago, I moved back here. And so I still have a lot of the same friends. We're all a little bit older now, and they said they laughed, we all got together and they laughed and said, we really were sure you had just joined some kind of weird Mooney cult or something, or somebody had, hypnotized you. We had all these fantasies about some evil, thing that had taken you over. And they were very surprised to discover that I had a wonderful life. Everything worked out great, and I was very happy in my work. So
it just shows you how thinking we know can shut down that possibility.
Well, it's what, I think one of the most profound things that Sid often said was, you would live in a different world if you weren't frightened by your own thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really what I'm talking about. There are thoughts that are so new and so out of the box that our first instinct is to go, oh, I couldn't possibly. But
Yeah.
when you don't get frightened by it, sometimes it just blossoms, and it comes, kind of opens up and shows you something beautiful.
That's gorgeous.
So I never discount wacky ideas that occur to me.
That's it. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I don't know if it's worth opening out to see if anybody has any questions at this
Oh,
point.
sure.
Who wants to come
Absolutely.
on and chat to Judith? And if not, we'll just carry on talking. But feel free to raise a hand if you do want to. Let me just have a little look, or type in the comments as well if you do want to come on, because I can't always see if you're raising your hand. And if not, we'll keep exploring.
Sometimes it takes a minute for people to form a question.
And yeah, I can't see any. Oh, there is one. We've got Tom. I'm just going to unmute you, Tom.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this. I really enjoy your talks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I was really struck by when you were saying that you talk to people about their hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And how that gave me a really uplifting feeling.
Uh-huh.
So I really appreciate that, and it's getting me reflecting on my own, because I'm in a situation now where I'm not working. I got to figure out the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's just was a very helpful thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? You don't really have to figure it out because it's there somewhere. It's just hasn't percolated up yet, It's almost like, it's funny that to me, like the next thing, almost everything that's been a next thing in my life has been a complete shock to me. Like I would have never dreamed of doing that. And then all of a sudden there I am doing it. And it's always been something that happened, despite all the plans that I was making, so even before I understood the principles, that's how life unrolled. I would stumble into things and then I somehow would rework it in my mind that I must have been working at it, but now I just sort of take it for granted. It's like my becoming, my joining the faculty of the medical school at West Virginia University. At the time I joined the faculty of the medical school, I had a master's degree in linguistics. And the last thing I would have expected is to be accepted as a faculty member in a medical school. But I was accepted because there was no program in what I did. The principals were not part of any university program that I could have studied. So the dean said, she's a leader in a field that doesn't exist in the university system yet, and we're going to have it exist here. And so they accepted it. It was a big surprise, because I remember when he invited me, I said, I have you seen my resume? I mean, you do realize that I'm not a doctor and I'm not even a doctoral doctor. The first thing I did when I got there was enroll in a PhD program. I was kind of like, I better do this. But so now I can truthfully call myself a psychologist, but at the time I couldn't. I could, but it would have been, not by their standards. So, but it was very interesting because, again, even my friends and the principals at the time said, you probably shouldn't do that, because you're just going to get reamed, because it's so competitive and you're not qualified and all this. And I went, you know what? I am qualified because I know about the human spirit, and they want me to help people to have less stress in medicine and healthcare. And I've been working in healthcare most of my career, and I know that's a big problem in healthcare. So yeah, I'm going to do it.
Great. Well, that's so inspiring, Judy. Thank you so much.
So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, thanks.
Follow your gut.
Thank you so much. I will.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks. I think that's such a relevant point actually at the moment, because with coronavirus, a lot of people are kind of experiencing that as well. And so yes, it's a really great thing to talk to, I guess, at the moment, is the kind of job insecurity.
Yeah, it's funny. I just did a program for the 3P UK. It was like one of the advanced programs for the upcoming conference, and it was called Emerging from Pandemic: Nostalgia or Reinvention.
Yeah.
Because nostalgia means I've got to get my old job back and I want my life just the way it used to be. And those people are suffering mightily because everything's changing.
Yeah.
And reinvention is like, well, it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see what my new place in it is, you know?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Fits in with the rediscovery theme.
Well, that's what everybody needs right now.
Yeah.
And the good news is that we're always in rediscovery, only half the time we're pushing it back, going like, oh no, I don't want to think about, I can't think about that. Oh, that's too weird. Yeah.
Lovely. We've got some more questions. So we have Jackie. I'm just going to unmute you.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Judy. I've really enjoyed listening to you. My situation is, I've been retired for, well, I had to go off on a medical retirement 21 years ago, actually, this month. And my husband, he's thinking of retiring either this year or next year. So now we're looking at the next phase of our life and what we're going to do. And it's kind of scary because I don't travel much anymore because of health reasons, and then thoughts, scare me about traveling. But and then I've told my husband, well, if these last couple months have been any sign of how it's going to be during retirement with him being home from work, I go, I don't know. So,
well, there's so many things that people do in life, and some part of finding a new path together is, as opposed to separately, is to discover something you both enjoy that you may never have thought of before.
Yeah, because
I have no idea what that would be, but that's kind of where I would turn my attention, is to say, what is it that we could do that we've never done before, but we both would love to try?
Yeah, because we both used to love going camping when we had our truck and travel trailer back when we were both working and healthier, and he'd come home on a Friday night and I'd have the trailer loaded and ready to go, and we'd just go off in any direction. We didn't know where we was going to end up, and that's what we're wanting to do now. But like I said, for some kind of health, some particular health reasons, I have to be careful, but I want to look forward to the future, not dread it,
Well, it's funny. I was talking to a student recently who, and this is relevant, so I'm just seem like I'm going off on a tangent, but the student discovered that that he was dyslexic, that he was very gifted in math, and so the problem was it was very hard for him not to reverse numbers and things. Like when he got into more advanced math, he would start these long problems and then he'd have to really check his work carefully. And he said, I feel as though because I'm dyslexic, I probably shouldn't major in math. And I said, well, you've gotten as far as you've gotten doing math and you're dyslexic. What's the difference? And he said, well, I'm dyslexic. And I said, yeah, you figured it out. You succeeded despite that. So why is it a problem now? He said, well, because I'm getting into more advanced math, it's going to be harder. Well, that's a thought. I mean, you're either reversing numbers or you're not. It really doesn't matter whether you're reversing them in a very difficult complex equation or in 2 + 2 = 4, And so, I said, here's the thing is, when you have a limitation, you can either see it as a limitation or a difference.
Yeah.
Because life is different. Like my life is different now. I can't run. I've got 2 artificial knees and arthritis in my back, and I'm 77 years old and I can't run, so that's not going to happen. so I've decided that I'm liking walking.
No, yeah.
But I still get to go out and see things and go on paths, and I can walk wherever I want to, and you know, that's just an adjustment. So a lot of
Yeah.
things that you love to do, you know, rather than thinking back into the past as the way it used to be, you have to think in the future as the way it could be, given the differences that we're experiencing. But when they don't
Okay,
look
I
like,
see what you mean.
yeah, yeah, because you're just thinking of yourself as, well, I'm a different person now than I was when I was 20. Well, God knows we all are, you know.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I'm 69 with arthritis in both
yeah.
knees, so yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. And yeah, you know, a lot of things that I used to do, like I love to garden, and I can't do that anymore. And I can do a little bit with pots and things, but I can't, you know, just get down on my hands and knees and crawl through the garden.
Right.
Yeah. And trim heavy things and all of that. But, you know, I find a way to still enjoy my plants. And I think that's part of it, is to always look for enjoyment. I feel like looking for joy, it's always there. It's the direction, it's directional, you know, just like happiness is a choice. It's like finding joy in what you can do rather than remembering what you used to do that you can't do anymore.
I get you, yeah. Yeah, and that's what I fall back on. I remember how it used to be as opposed to now, and oh, I can't do this, so no, we can't travel anymore. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. You'd be surprised, you know, you'd just be surprised at what you'll discover when you look for it. It's really kind of, it's almost simple, too simple, but it's very meaningful to people to focus on what's possible rather than what's no longer possible.
True, very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. So we also have William. I'm going to unmute you.
Okay. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
How you doing?
I just, I love listening to your happiness.
Thank you.
It's such a, and what comes to me, and I didn't know it's like, I know there's nothing I really want from you right now. It's just that I just want to share with you how much I just love how I experience you, and the feeling of joy. And it's when you mentioned about our thoughts are like our friends, or like Byron Katie says, like thoughts are little children.
Yeah.
I think so much of my life I've looked to other people for connection, approval, this, whatever. Right. But now it's so much more rewarding I really am pursuing because I know I have this happiness in me now.
Yeah.
Or let that decide for me, just as long as I make connections with that.
Yeah.
And then see where it leads me. And I see you such a great example of this. Yeah. Even though you're so independent, that with all your thoughts, you're surrounded by umpteen number of friends. Every thought is such a friendly possibility.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it, that, you know, you want your thoughts to be your friends. That's true.
And, when I get more focused on that and not make so important, years ago in therapy, I used to, when clients say they were pursuing happiness, same reaction. What? No, other things that you do to work through things and whatever. But gradually, it just is so much simpler. And then to see whatever the thoughts are, it's just either they're aiding me or abetting me.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, I just wanted to say hi.
Oh, thank you.
I love it when I see your. So.
Oh, it's nice to see you. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, so we have another question from Khalifa. He says, "Hi Judy, you look truly elegant. Please could you explore on that there is nothing to do but a lot to see? Thank you."
So there is nothing to do but a lot to see. That's a really profound thought, because it goes, to me, goes back to, again, you could go back to Second Chance or any of Sid's books where he talks about seeing, little SEE, and seeing with all capital letters. He talks about seeing and seeing, hearing and hearing, knowing and knowing. And, you know, a lot to see really means that when you look deep enough inside, the answer is always there. And if you work too hard at it, you can't do those two things at once. You can't get your mind engaged in activity of analysis and figuring things out. And the one thing I noticed very early in life is, I don't know if you've ever had this experience of getting a big yellow pad out and drawing a line down and doing pro-con, got to make a decision. And you discover that for every pro, there's a con. It never ends. You can go through page after page after page. And every time you think of a pro, you think of the bad side, you know, well, this, but that. And then you realize there's no winning that one. You know, the pros and the cons are always going to be tied. And it's like you start to realize that the pros, the things that look appealing, are just a happier thought than the con, which is the scary thought. But this could happen. So to me, that's really seeing that whatever you pursue in life, when you look within and you follow your own wisdom, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. The only thing that keeps things from working out is starting to have a lot of negative thoughts about them. And that's true in relationships, it's true in decision making, it's true in everything. You know, and you got to remember, when you first decide to do something, you were looking at what might be good about it. And, you know, if it doesn't work out, it's because either you saw something that you missed before, or you started having a lot of negative thoughts about it and you could no longer make it work. So it's all thought. It's just, all of life is just the illusion that we've created of what we think our reality ought to look like, you know. And that's a nice thing. That's seeing. It's seeing beyond the illusion to the universal truth that wisdom is always there for us. And whatever we do from our wisdom and from a peaceful, quiet place, a state of mind, that's going to take us in a direction that we want to go.
Thank you. Amanda wants to come on as well. I hope that answers your question, Khalifa. I'm just going to unmute you, Amanda.
Amanda?
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you, Judy. I always love hearing you talk, and I actually saw you at the 3GPC in London at the Tikkun conference a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just lovely to hear you tonight. And
thank you.
Lots of things that you talked about resonated, but particularly the thing around striving. And I recently listened to The Second Chance being read by somebody else recently during the lockdown period, and that thing about success,
being happiness.
It really hit me. I really saw that differently tonight, in a different way. And it's been very different, you know, during the lockdown, obviously, because usually I'm an acupuncturist, and I'm usually working in a clinic one-to-one with clients. And as soon as the lockdown happened, I had to close the clinic. And so I've gone to being full-time mom, and my daughter's been off school, and it's just been very different.
Yeah.
And I just noticed how I wasn't sleeping so well for a few nights, and then I don't know, just trying to get on top of everything, and it's like trying to make it striving without realizing. And even just earlier, my daughter's actually with me. She's here in the car. We came to see the sunset during the call.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, but just when I raised my hand earlier, what came up was because I've always wanted to share with groups, and sometimes when I go to share, I notice sometimes that there's like this kind of fear rising, and you're talking about seeing with a little less of either big seeing. It really allowed me to experience the difference between that, because in the moment, because I lowered my hand, and then I said to my daughter, "Come on," because she wanted to see the sunset, and I said, "Let's go." It was like 3 minutes to get here, and then in me dropping it and the attention in a beautiful direction. We live in a really we're lucky where we live because we get to see the sunset over the sea, and it just made it very different.
Yeah, that's
I
beautiful.
saw it. I saw it. I get the charger. Sorry. So anyway, but I don't want to take up too much time. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I love that you're the thing about Lacona, because I've been to Lacona once. I was on Dickens' program, and so I loved hearing that aspect of your story as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing your insight. That's beautiful.
Thank you, Amanda. That's gorgeous. Right. So I think Dana had a question, but we only got half of it. She messaged me privately. So I don't know, Dana, do you want to come on live, or are you not wanting to come on live? Let me know.
Do you have the question?
I have half the question because I think she didn't finish it. So it was something around suffering with anxiety and agoraphobia. So I don't know if there's enough to say on that.
Well, anxiety is a lot of fearful thinking taken seriously for a long time. It creates anxiety. Fearful thoughts always come and go. So we all have fearful thoughts. It's normal to have fearful thoughts. But the anxiety comes when we get frightened by our fearful thoughts. So we get fearful about being fearful. You know, it's kind of like it's a layering of more fearful thinking onto the fearful thinking that we have. And agoraphobia is just an exaggerated manifestation of long-term anxiety, because in the eagerness to protect ourselves, we make our world smaller and smaller. And it's very interesting to me that when I first met Bill Pettit, and I've got to make this story very short, but one of the things that he offered for me to try to understand why his practice was different was, he said, you know, maybe you'd like to talk to some of my patients, because I couldn't grasp how he, unlike all the other psychiatrists I knew, would see people for such a short time and release them. And the first patient I talked to ever who had this approach was a woman who had been agoraphobic since college. She was in her 50s. So for almost 30 years, she had not really left her house. And she had caretakers, and her daughter came and cared for her. And what happened, how she ended up meeting Bill, was that she had an anxiety attack, and her daughter was with her and thought it was a heart attack, because she, you know, didn't know that much about it. And she called an ambulance. And when they tried to wheel her out of the house, she just went insane. You know, she was trying to fight them and get off the cart and everything. And they had to sedate her to get her to the hospital.
Sorry, 1 second.
Which required a psychiatric consult. So when I talked to her, I said, well, it had been about 6 weeks. And at this point, she's sitting in a public building talking to me after a group. So clearly she's no longer agoraphobic. And while I was talking to her, I said, well, how long did you see him? Or how many times did you see him? And she said, oh, let me think. She said, maybe six times. A couple of times it was just I went to his group. And I said, really? Well, what did he do for you? And she said, well, not that much, really. She said, it's not like what he did. She said, the thing that happened for me is he just started talking to me about the thought and how seriously I was taking all these thoughts for so long that I kind of lost sight of the fact that they were thoughts that I had come up with, that I wasn't born agoraphobic. I didn't start my life that way. That is something that I brought into my life by the way I was using my thinking innocently. And she said, he talked to me like I wasn't crazy. She said, he's the first psychiatrist I've had that talked to me like I was like a next door neighbor, just like a regular person, only I had this little habit in my thinking. And she said, after he left that first time he saw me in the hospital, she said, I was just lying there in bed, kind of looking out the window, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've been scaring myself to death with my own thinking. Isn't that silly? And she said, after I had that thought, I started to question all these assumptions that I made about life and what was scary and what wasn't. And she said, when I left the hospital, they were really worried about me leaving the hospital room. And I said, no, don't worry about it. Just my daughter's here. We'll just walk down. And she said, I got on the elevator, went downstairs. I walked through the parking lot. I got in the car with her. And my daughter said, what's happening to you, Mom? And she said, oh, it wasn't life, honey. It was just me.
That's good.
I made it up.
Yeah, that's good.
Now that sounds kind of superficial, but it really isn't.
Yeah.
It really isn't, because anxiety is a set of very important seeming thoughts that we have held on to and worked with and taken seriously for a long, long time, to the point where we forgot that they were thoughts. Anyway, that's my very short take on it, because I know we're running out of time. So.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And actually, anxiety was something I used to experience through before I came across the principles, and it was almost like you said, it kind of just fell away as I saw the nature of thought. So I guess it's just kind of staying in that conversation and hearing something new. And that's gorgeous. So thank you. I hope that helped Dana. She said thank you. That's perfect. So I think that's all the questions that we've got. So thank you so much, Judith. I'm just
well, it's been a pleasure.
It's been beautiful, and I really, really love that conversation, because it kind of opened up that hopes and dreams kind of, and the possibility that I really was hoping that you would speak to as well. So it was, thank you so much. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, thank you all very much for being with us, and I'm very grateful to you for inviting me, and I was very happy to be part of this. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Whatever you do, just enjoy it.
Thank you so much. And before I make some announcements, is there anything that you want to kind of share about where people can hear more? Because I'll pop your links and everything in the replay as well. Find out more.
Well, I have a website, and it's a really easy one to remember. It's www.3-principles, altogether, no spaces, 3-principles.com. And there's a lot of stuff on the website. It's all free. I'm not selling anything, but so you're welcome to visit that. And Chris Heath and I are starting a podcast very soon. We've started to make them, and we're trying to get several made before we start putting them out. It's called Psychology Has It Backwards. And we're just having fun with what's all of the silly ways that we've thought the world was more important than our thinking about the world.
That's amazing. Oh, I look forward to hearing about that. I'll pop that link into the
okay.
I know
when we get the podcast going, I'll send you the
perfect. And I know you've got a blog as well, and there's a post that I was reading called Dancing the Universe the other day, which I really love that one. So I'll pop that in, and everybody can.
Tons of blogs, and they're all on my website. I've written blogs for a long time. I haven't written that many during this time that I've been home for the pandemic, for two reasons. One is I've had a lot of clients, been doing a lot of free work actually, but also I'm writing a book, so I thought I would take some time away from my blog and finish the book.
Amazing. That's great. And well, it's been lovely having you. Thank you so much. I'm just going to make a few announcements about the next speakers, so if you need to leave, that's absolutely fine.
All right. I do have to have another call, so I do thank you though, and I thank you all very much. So goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Judith. Okay, so next Friday.
Come in with me.
Oh, the next Friday, the 29th. Oh, no, hang on, it's 29th today, isn't it? So next Friday, anyway, we have the wonderful Jason Shears with us. So he is here to talk all about his journey with addiction. And how he has kind of uncovered, when he came across the work of Michael Neal and Sid Banks, he has basically been sharing the 3 principles ever since, because it changed his life. So he's sharing about his understanding about addiction, and how also his journey has become more creative and simply from following his joy and fun. So it follows on quite nicely from this one, with Judith talking about hopes and dreams. So that's next week. And then we also have the wonderful Linda Pettit the week after. She is here to share on the hidden gifts of grief. And then we also have Karen DeMarco joining us after that, and then there's a couple of others that are lined up as well, so that's very exciting. So keep with us, and you'll be able to dip into the ones that speak to you. Also an invitation, I have been unfolding and unraveling and creating from joy, really, a couple of programs for those who want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. So I've been enjoying the summit, and I'm still continuing that, but for those who want to kind of explore a little bit deeper, I have a Self-Rediscovery Foundations program, which is really to help people get a grounding in these principles a little bit deeper, and it's kind of like a mixture of masterclasses, speaker montages, and then also some beautiful live group circles, which it's just amazing to see the magic that's kind of unfolding in those, with all the insights and the exploration, and kind of, it's just a really beautiful safe space. So that's been really fun, and the next one of those is starting in July. And then kind of the second part of my journey was all about unraveling a life we love, with that insight that we can kind of play and dance in the hopes and dreams that we have. So that's the Unravel program. So if you kind of feel like you've already got a grounding in the principles, that is then the next part of the journey. So that's also starting in July. I've got a program to kind of help us really embody our truth and our wisdom, and unravel a life we love, kind of playing in who we want to be. So that's again from a place of fun, and yeah, creating what we desire. So that's also starting in July. All the information is on my website. If that calls to you, then just tune in, listen, and again, follow that nice feeling if that's something that you're feeling drawn to. And then also finally, I am very excited to announce that I am speaking at 3P UK. So I am very honoured to be sharing the stage with all of the speakers who have been on my summit so far, which is really, really a privilege. And I'm going to be sharing my journey. So this is at 3P UK at the weekend on the 7th to the 9th of June. So I'm sharing about finding freedom from suffering to unravel a life we love, and why we can ditch self-help and embrace self-rediscovery. So yeah, that's kind of all the announcements. Oh, Donna says she's going, she's bought her ticket. It's actually a really amazing event. I don't know, you've probably heard of it, but yes, I went last year and it was brilliant. So I'm really, really thrilled to be able to kind of share my journey in that as well. Very, very much honoured. Yeah, if there are any questions, I'm always on hand to answer them. So do just drop me an email, or visit my website and ask me on there. Or also there's I'm always live in the Self-Rediscovery community of connection in the Facebook group as well. So you're very welcome to join us. There's a lovely little family of support going in there, and we're just enjoying the exploration together. So it's lovely to have you all. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed Judith. Let me know your favourite takeaway. Yeah, lovely. I'll pop the links. Somebody just asked about the links. They will be in the member vault. So when I put the replay up, I will pop all those links that she mentioned in there. So just take a little look. And so that is basically, when you go into the member vault, go on to Judith, and on the right hand side there's 3 lessons, and you want the one that says replay. And there might be one separately for links as well, actually. So just have a little look there. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll leave you for the rest of your day. So lots of love. See you soon.
Thank you, Nicole.
That's all right.
Thank you.